Yo, 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 what is up, everybody? It is your boy out here, CJ the DJ, coming to you live with a brand new episode of Hustle and Burn. As always, man, appreciate y'all tuning in. Of course, it is Sunday. Hope everybody had a great week. Hopefully, we can end it off right, you dig? Appreciate y'all tuning in. Shout out to our sponsors, guys, Diamond Consulting. For any general contractors out there in the Front Range, Colorado area that may need or utilize subcontractors in any different scope of work, whether it be in new builds, remodels, renovations, contact Diamond Consulting, guys. What they have and offer is a private network of fully insured, pre-vetted subcontractors looking to take on more work and grow and scale their companies. So contact Diamond Consulting, 720-563-7452 today, man. Go get that work. Again, appreciate y'all tuning in. We got a great pod. We gonna get into it like we do in most cases with the Not For Long League, the NFL, man, and the coaching carousel we've been talking about, man. It got even crazier this week. A lot of head coach signings. We ain't gonna get into all of them, but we gonna get into the big bad one. Of course, Liam Cohen, man. Liam Cohen taking the head coaching job with the Jacksonville Jaguars, guys. This is, very good for him. Of course, congrats to Liam Cohen, his first head coaching job. But it's the way that he got there that actually, has kind of the NFL world in chat. Many of you may have heard, some of you may have not. Let me break it down for you, kind of the timeline here as it went. So Liam Cohen goes down to Jacksonville and interviews for the Jacksonville Jaguars head coaching position. All right. Does not strike a deal with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Flies back to Tampa Bay, the team that he now coaches for already as the offensive coordinator. Had a great season, made the playoffs, right? Whatever it may be. Makes a record-breaking deal to be the highest-paid offensive coordinator ever in the NFL, all right? One of the stipulations, it bars him from having another interview with the Jacksonville Jaguars for the head coaching vacancy, all right? Because I'm sure that he had mentioned that, he was a little bit curious about it. Now, he does not sign the contract, okay? He does not sign the contract. It's kind of a handshake sort of thing. Hey, get the contract drawn up, we'll chat, we'll get it signed, right? Cool. Now, shortly after the failed sign of Liam Cohen, all right, after the Jaguars couldn't sign him, what happened is the Jaguars fired their general manager, Trent Balk, all right? So Trent Balk actually gets fired, okay, from the Jacksonville Jaguars organization. He had previously been retained after they fired Doug Peterson, which essentially signals that it's not a GM or organization thing, it's a head coaching thing when you fire a GM, right? So, again, they fire him. Now, again, Cohen hadn't signed his contract yet with Tampa Bay, okay? It was just a handshake, draw the contract up, we'll get it signed. So, they're calling him, hey, you got the contract drawn up, come sign this thing, man, let's get it going. We're getting the boys back together, getting the band back together, let's go do this again. Hopefully we can make a deeper run. Pause, right? Okay, now, ultimately, can't get a hold of this guy. He's nowhere to be found. Finds out he flew down to Jacksonville after Trent Balk was fired to take the head coaching job of the Jacksonville Jaguars, okay? So kind of dissed his old organization, all right, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but he took the offensive coordinator position with essentially a stipulation, not a stipulation, if you will, within the contract, but what it signals is, hey, you get to go select the GM, that you want to kind of build your vision around, okay? So very interesting how he got down there. Again, congrats to Liam Cohen. It is his first time head coach. If you want to make a splash onto the head coaching scene, that is one way to do it, right? Is to, kind of dish your old team, say that you're going to sign the contract, get it drawn up, then they can't get a hold of you literally for hours. Couldn't get a hold of him. Comes out allegedly, he said that his kid was sick. He was at the doctor's office. Again, he was on a flight to Jacksonville to go sign the contract to become the new head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So, wild madness, man. Madness. I have kind of a conspiracy theory on this. What I think happened, guys, this is, again, hasn't been alleged. This is just my opinion of kind of what broke down on this, right, behind the scenes. I think that, the general manager, Trent Balk, he was hired in 2020 by the Jacksonville Jaguars, okay? I bring that year up because that's closely tied with the year Trevor Lawrence was drafted. His first season was the 2021 season. So Trent Balk's first season hired as the GM, obviously, is the season that they drafted Trevor Lawrence, okay? I think, in my opinion, during head coaching interviews, several candidates expressed displeasure or at least a little bit of concern surrounding Trevor Lawrence and maybe the long-term future, if you will, and the long-term potential of the team, the organization with him at the helm, if you will, okay? Cohen probably likely proposed evaluating Lawrence, in my opinion, for probably a year. I think Cohen and a couple other coaches said, hey, we'll give it a year, but we're not sold on the guy. At the end of the day, if it doesn't work out after this first season, what we're going to want to do as a head coach is we're going to want to move on from him and try and bring in a new piece at the quarterback position. I think Balk resisted that. He resisted moving on from his guy. I think, if you're in a GM mindset, right, and you bring in this guy, this is his guy that he brought in, he's not going to want to move off Trevor Lawrence, okay? And I think the owner, his name's Shad Khan, he's very, very involved with the Jacksonville Jaguars, always has since he was the owner. He's at the practices, he's at mini camps, shit like that, right? Very involved. I think within these interviews, he heard multiple coaches have the same concern about, again, the long-term view and potential with Trevor Lawrence at the helm. And I think he heard a couple of coaches say, look, we're willing to give it a year, but if that year doesn't work out, we want to move on and explore options. And then you hear Trent Ball kind of going against that. As the GM, if you're hearing multiple head coaches, multiple people that are qualified to become head coaches in the NFL, right? Multiple people that are very hot to become coaches saying the same exact thing, and then your GM is saying something different, it may tell you the times of, again, the ever-changing NFL, right? I don't know. Again, that's just my conspiracy on what happened. I think the owner then goes out and fires him, calls Cohen like, look, I want to hire you, man. I liked what you were saying. Let's get this thing together. You can choose the GM with me. Let's do it. I need you to fly to Jacksonville. I got the contract ready for you. Boom, done. Cohen gets on the flight, sign, done deal, right? That's just my conspiracy theory surrounding it, guys, but very excited to see what the Jacksonville Jaguars have in store. Of course, they have offensive rookie of the year candidate. He's not going to win it, unfortunately, but I said it, a couple weeks back. He wasn't even in the chat a month or two ago, man. It was ridiculous that Brian Thomas Jr. wasn't getting no love in the offensive rookie of the year chat. He is a finalist, so I'm just happy about that, even though we know he's not going to win, but kudos to Brian Thomas Jr. Very, very excited to see what Jacksonville is going to do, man. Very excited. But just an interesting way to make a splash into the head coaching scene, man. Now, Pete Carroll returns to the head coaching scene, making his splash back with the Las Vegas Raiders, man. The Raiders hired Pete Carroll as the head coach following a trend of veteran head coaches, like I mentioned, coming in to stabilize teams before younger coaches take over. Essentially, they're just kind of like a figure there just to hold it over, right? Like, I don't think Pete Carroll probably turns into like a long-term coach for the Las Vegas Raiders, right? But like I've said and mentioned before, as we've this last couple weeks chatted about the coaching carousel in the NFL, is teams in rebuilds like the Raiders need experienced coaches to come in and demand respect and establish a structure, okay? Similar to a Dan Campbell in Detroit, how he came in, he established a respect and a culture, right? But they need experienced coaches. Dan Campbell wasn't too experienced, right? He had been an interim coach with the Miami Dolphins, but that was really, I guess that's a bad example because that was really his first time head coach. But one of those sort of coaches who comes in and demands respects, typically, most guys aren't like Dan Campbell is what I should say, and come in and just have that right off the bat, right? They need to have an experience with it to come in and demand that and establish that culture. So, and honestly, just a quick point, speaking on Detroit, I will say, since I kind of brought up Dan Campbell, realistically, the Lions offensive and defensive coordinator left in this cycle, right? They both got head coaching positions. Guys, losing an offensive and defensive coordinator in one coaching cycle is very, very big for a team. I don't care what team you are. I don't care how good you've been doing. I'm telling you, man, this could tremendously affect the Detroit Lions' momentum that they've been having. Which begs the question, did they potentially miss their window to win a Super Bowl? Because there's a couple other teams that are coming up within the division, right, that are doing very well, that are looking a lot better. I don't know. The Lions may have missed their window, man. That window is very small. But since I brought up Dan Campbell in a bad light, I shouldn't have. A bad example. I better mention the Detroit Lions right there. But what I'm saying is, guys, these teams in these rebuilds, they need these coaches to come in and demand the respect and demand that we're establishing a new culture. Pete Carroll is a Super Bowl winning head coach, right? Like, his last couple of years in Seattle weren't horrific. It was just, hey, they weren't the guys that they were previously when they were winning Super Bowls at the end of the day, so we got to move on, right? It's just what it boils down to. Now, why I also mentioned the Raiders and bringing up Pete Carroll in that signing is I think it begs an extremely interesting question about the Las Vegas Raiders this offseason and their quarterback search. I think what the Las Vegas Raiders may do and potentially should do, it's just my opinion, is Russell Wilson's looking for a solid contract. Probably the final, I should say, solid contract of his career, okay? 20, 30 million plus per year most likely is what he's looking to get, right? The Raiders, of course, have the cap space to make that happen. Tom Brady's now involved with the organization. He's going to focus heavily on the quarterback. I think he could potentially reunite Russell Wilson with Pete Carroll, all right? Now, he didn't end the season strong, Russell Wilson, right? But still, even without ending the season strong, he was outperforming every single quarterback on the Las Vegas Raiders roster. So you're not losing anything by signing Russell Wilson. And you know, again, it's a minimal contract. You're not signing him to a max deal here. We're probably talking, you know, he's going to get a $50 to $100 million deal, probably 20 mil a year maybe, 20 mil a year, 30 mil a year maybe, right? Which isn't crazy at that point. That's probably what Russell is going to get, okay? I would say is 50 to 70. 50 to 70 is what I would say is more good for us. So he gets 50 to 70 from the Las Vegas Raiders. He returns coaches to his old coach with Pete Carroll, who, again, I just mentioned it with Pete Carroll winning Super Bowls. Guess who his quarterback was? Russell Wilson. I'm not saying Russell Wilson can take you to a Super Bowl right now, but I'm saying in terms of demanding that culture, rebuilding a structure, and establishing that from day one, I think pairing Pete Carroll with Russell Wilson does that because of the way Russell Wilson also carries himself as an organization quarterback. And the reason that is probably because his whole young career was spent with Pete Carroll, right? I'm telling you guys, man, this stuff translates. You see it translate. So that's just my opinion. I think the Raiders should go out and look at a Russell Wilson this offseason at the quarterback position. Just my opinion. My rebuild plan, if I was the Las Vegas Raiders, would be to sign Russell Wilson at the quarterback position this offseason. I would draft Ashton Jeanty at the number 6 pick. The reason I say that is when you draft Ashton Jeanty, what you're doing is you're pairing a older veteran quarterback who's not on his last legs. Obviously, he's still got some juice. This ain't no Aaron Rodgers, nothing like that, right? The guy's still got some juice, Russell Wilson, that is, okay? So you pair a quarterback like that, a veteran quarterback, who needs the pocket to be able to open up with a young, dynamic running back who, if he translates to the NFL in the way that we all hope and think that he will because of the talent he had in college, right? Even though the final games of his career were a little shaky versus good defenses, right? I don't know, in that Heisman race. But I'm just saying, if he translates properly to the NFL like everyone thinks he's gonna, that would be perfect to open up the pocket for a quarterback like Russell Wilson, who works best off play action passing, who works best off a moving pocket, right? And when he's rolling to his right side. I'm just saying, you sign Russ, you draft Ashton Jeanty, you already have Jacoby Myers at the wide receiver position who was balling out without a quarterback, okay? Then you have Brock Bowers, who's arguably the best tight end in the NFL already, right? Without a quarterback, all right? Pair him with a veteran quarterback. Russell Wilson always liked his tight ends if you go back and look at it. I'm just saying, okay? There's a lot of things that they can do. And then with other draft picks, second, third round draft picks, you go and get another wide receiver to kind of fit in that slot role, to fit in, to kind of get a Lad McConkey sort of feel, right? And I think a steal for them, my boy out of Colorado, LeJohntay Wester. I think the Raiders specifically should get and target LeJohntay Wester in the second, third, or fourth round. Now, what I think with him is honestly not just the Raiders. Any team that gets LeJohntay Wester is getting a steal in the NFL draft. I think this kid, his skill set, the way that he runs routes will translate to the NFL. So I think you sign Russ, draft Ashton Jeanty, then you go get someone like a LeJohntay Wester at the wide receiver position, and the rest of free agency just needs to be focused on the defense and specifically the defensive backs. Building those DBs up to be very good. Maybe go get a Shiloh, safety. I don't know, Shiloh, my boy, let's see you know what I mean? I don't know, man. I don't know. There's a lot that could happen, guys, with the Raiders, but that's just my opinion on kind of what the Raiders rebuild plan should be. All right? Now, moving on from the Raiders, the Cowboys have hired offensive coordinator Brian Schottenheimer as their head coach. Moving forward, and it sounds like they're going to sign the Bears' old head coach who was just fired, Matt Eberflus, as the defensive coordinator. We're not even going to comment on it, but it is official. I will make it publicly known this season upcoming. it's Raider Nation. It's Raider Nation this season upcoming. The Cowboys have been banned, not only just, in terms of fandom, but in terms of the podcast. We will not be talking about nor reporting on the Dallas Cowboys any further until further notice, but specifically this upcoming season. It is Raiders Nation. That's who we rocking with. That is our choice for this upcoming season, man. The Cowboys got to take a back seat. They got to sit back. It's just ridiculous. And this week, the Fried Award of the Week, ladies and gentlemen, goes to myself as well as Cowboys fans around the nation. Reason being is for believing that the Cowboys would do anything different than exactly what they did. All right? It's just done. It's just done that we get the Fried Award of the Week, myself and Cowboys fans around the nation. This is tragic. That's why we got to hang them up. This is just an all-time low. This is just ridiculous, man. I got to move on. I got to move on from the NFL now. That just gets me too hyped, gets me too hot, man. It's ridiculous. We'll move on to some music. This week, Kanye West had his net worth now reported at a $2.77 billion. Despite being broke after his fallout with Adidas. If a lot of you recall, he had a fallout with Adidas, accused them of stealing his designs, reselling them, but under the Adidas brand, changing them up a little bit differently, called out the entire industry, essentially, criticized Jewish leadership and power in multiple different, sectors. And this led to Adidas dropping him. They froze his bank accounts. He essentially had financial isolation. There was a time Kanye West said he couldn't use his debit cards, couldn't go withdraw money, couldn't do anything, right? But as I mentioned to people in Mike's circle in the past when all this was going down, is it was just an exit plan, and it was very strategic by Kanye West for him to do this. He hinted at this in multiple interviews years ago while this was happening as well, right? And I don't know, man. And I think it just begs the whole overall, right, vision of long-term vision, guys, beats short-term goals. Okay, long-term vision beats short-term goals. That is the theme for this pod here. Long-term vision beats short-term gains, or goals. Either one, it works. Long-term vision beats short-term gains. Whatever works at the end of the day. Kanye's ownership and his foresight, guys, it secured his comeback at the end of the day. Expect Yeezy, in my opinion, to dominate again with streams, sold-out clothing, renewed public support. You just can't cancel Kanye at the end of the day. You just can't cancel Kanye, realistically speaking. Just like you can't cancel Chris Brown. This week, his fans are in a frenzy over his new music video for his track titled Residuals off of an album he released recently. And, his fans are in a frenzy essentially because this album wasn't number one. This song wasn't number one. At the end of the day, I love me some Chris Brown, right? I love me some Chris Brown. He is one of the GOATs in the R&B sector. But I made this comment to someone on Twitter earlier, and I said, everyone wants to say, why isn't this number one? Why doesn't Chris Brown get no respect, right? At the end of the day, guys, majority of the streaming sector, right, is dominated by people that are in the age group under 20 years old, and is specifically under the age of 16, right? Those are the ones that are streaming a lot of this music and consuming a lot of this content that is coming out these days. And a lot of them just aren't listening to R&B. Like, at the end of the day, the numbers just don't translate. The way that R&B works these days is, unfortunately, because it's not so mainstream as it was in the past, you now have your fan base and your fandom that's going to stick with you and be loyal, but that is the majority of what you're going to get. Unless you have some crazy breakout wild hit, and a lot of times that crazy breakout wild hit has to go with the times. If the times aren't R&B, then it's going to have to, segue into another genre, if you will, into a country, into a hip-hop. You're going to have to be on a feature. Something like that is going to have to take off to make it pop off if you're in the R&B sector. It just is what it is. I'm just pointing that out because a lot of people were commenting on that. A lot of people were up in arms saying Chris Brown doesn't get his flowers. And, it is obviously the public image, of course, because of his past. But a lot of it is just because of the R&B sector and the genre overall and where it sits within the younger generation. People aren't riding to that music. It just is what it is. Bottom line, I don't care what you say. I tell my boy KJ all the time because he be trying to send R&B songs to the chat. Like, brother, it's 6 a.m. You're crazy, fam. You're crazy. Stop it, right? Like, no one does that shit. But I had to comment on those two things specifically within the music sector, man. One thing I also wanted to touch on briefly, just within obviously the media sector, the entertainment world, if you will, to kind of bring it all together, is the media landscape changing, guys. Companies like CNN and MSNBC, they're laying off workers and actually restructuring, right, And what that does is it signals a need to adjust narratives, okay? And the reason that I point that out is just to kind of wake you guys up to the things that are happening overall. Outlets like CNN have to adapt to a more neutral or pro-Republican tone in order to stay in business. At the end of the day, guys, money talks, right? These companies cannot stay in business if for the next 4 years they constantly go against Donald Trump, but this time even more because of the way that it was the Electoral College and the majority vote that Trump won. Essentially, last time they could get away with it because, you know, hey, we got this many people that want it. More people want it. Now, that's not the case. And they see their viewership going down. They see what's happening with the new media, if you will, online and social media and podcasters and stuff like that. So you see them switching. When you hear companies are laying off 6% of their workforce, it's because they have to bring in new faces. They have to bring in new thoughts, new thinking that conforms to the new way so that they can stay relevant. Otherwise, they're jumping off a cliff financially and business-wise, right? So very interesting. It's just something I wanted to really toss into the pod today to kind of wake you guys up to see what's happening overall. Think about the rhetorics and everything that you're hearing in now times and, you know, previously in the last 6 to 12 months, right? About this regime and everything you've heard and seen, even realistically. 2 to 4 years from now, think of what the rhetoric is on these exact same news sources you see laying off 6% of their workforces now. It's going to be very interesting to see because now, again, because of the majority win for Trump, it's not just a win for Trump, it's a win for the Republican Party. They are slated, whether you like it or not, to be in power for the next probably 8 years. I would say potentially even 12, right? We don't get political on this podcast, right? We just look at the facts, the basics of everything that's going on. That's just the reality. So look into that. Look into the companies that are, you know, laying off a lot of their workers, bringing in new faces and new things. Look at a lot of them that are stopping these policies that they were doing under the old regime. Very interesting that some of these companies would cut off DEI, stuff like that. They were being forced to, right? Very interesting. Now, do I think those companies should just stop completely in the involvement of those inclusive things? No, of course not. But at the end of the day, it just shows you the force that the old administration did have. We'll see what the new administration does, because I do think sectors like that need to be regulated in some way, shape, or form to offer fair opportunity. That's what we hope. Again, we don't get political on this podcast, guys. Just wanted to point that out in the media landscape and sector. A lot of these companies changing faces, bringing in new faces, firing people, letting people go, man. We'll get in and lead that into the investment wrap of the week this week. Not going to get into the NASDAQ, the Dow Jones, whether they were up or down. It was a pretty good week, actually, this week, at least for me personally. I know my portfolio was looking nice. But rumored 0% capital gains, guys, under Donald Trump. Now, this isn't confirmed or anything, but potential Trump policy is to eliminate capital gain tax on U.S.-based cryptocurrencies, guys, like Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, Cardano, Solana, USDC. And that's very important, guys. Crypto, US-based crypto specifically for a time, not forever, of course, but would be tax-free, guys, offering massive opportunity within that sector. We've been talking about it. We've been getting into it. It is real. It is here. If you didn't see, Trump's meme coin just had a market cap of like $77 billion before they rubbed it, right? Like, I'm just saying, guys, if you want to kind of dip your toes in to the you know, crypto world, or at least the digital asset world, if you will, one safe bet is the USDC. It's one of those that I just mentioned that would be potentially 0% capital gains. On this is USDC, guys. What this is, just in case for those of you that don't know about it, what USDC is, it's not a cryptocurrency, okay? It's what's called a stable coin, okay? Fully backed by the US dollar, mind you. Now, a stable coin, guys, means essentially the value isn't going to move, okay? Almost at all. You're not gonna be going down, you're not gonna be going up. You're storing your value, your money, in a digital asset, okay? Now, why I bring that up is right now, USDC offers a 4.1% APY on your money with full liquidity for spending and transfers, okay? That's extremely important, guys, for those of you that aren't really into the crypto world and sector. A lot of times when you're transferring money out of certain accounts, there are fees, or transferring money into other accounts or into other currencies, there are fees involved. For the USDC, if you want to transfer it into the account and then you want to transfer it to your bank account, there are no fees involved. You transfer 5,000 in, you can transfer 5,000 out immediately, but you are earning 4.1% off of those funds at all times that your money is in USDC. Again, it's not going to go up, it's not going to go down. The crypto market could go up 10,000% tomorrow. Your USDC is not going to do that. It could go down 10,000%. Your USDC is not going to do that. It is always going to stay 1-to-1 with the United States dollar. It is always going to be worth its value, okay? So I'm just saying, if you want to dip your toes in USDC, it's making more than, at the end of the day, guys, any savings account that you can think of, I'm going to guess, any regular savings account that you can think of that is fully liquid at all times, that has no minimums, that has no fees, that has no annuals, that has none of that nonsense, right? You're not going to find it. You're just not going to find it, okay? That's where you could store your money if you want to dip your toes in for a safe bet in the crypto and digital asset world that it seems like we're shifting more into. I don't think this is just going to be 5 years, guys, that it's just going to happen. But I do think these are going to have some sort of space in the world, right? And that leads me into, other things like, realistically speaking, Coinbase is now offering crypto-backed loans, okay? That's lending money to you using your cryptocurrency as collateral. To me, that's just absolutely insane, because you pair the 0% capital gains, potentially. For those that don't know, loans are untaxed. Any loan you get from the government is untaxed. That's why rich people take out loans. If they take out a loan for $50,000 and they use that $50K to buy a property, the $50K that they had, it can't be taxed as income, right? Now they just brought a cash flowing asset that pays for the loan itself, right? It's just how rich people, at least in the real estate sector, do what they do with loans. So you can take a loan from Coinbase using your crypto as collateral, use that loan from them to buy more crypto on Coinbase, pay your loan off, and it's potentially all going to be zero tax. That's just wild. That's just wild to even think about, man. That is just wild to even think about. But what I'm saying at the end of the day is, those are good things to start looking into. USDC and potentially crypto-backed loans that Coinbase is already starting to do, guys. It's just absolutely wild that you see this sort of thing happening. But I really want to point out the USDC, again, 4.1% APY, guys. You should really go look into that if you're looking to dip your toes into the crypto and digital asset world. More on the stock market side, TKO Holdings and Netflix, guys. If you didn't listen to me, 3-4 weeks back or 2-3 weeks back when I mentioned that WWE, Netflix and WWE were merging and bringing Raw and SmackDown onto the network, bringing their catalog onto the network. Since they merged, guys, TKO Holdings is up 10%, okay, since the merger, all right? Now, it's retail investors catching on. That's all it is, guys, okay? That's all it is. And again, I am still retail. I'm getting closer and closer to the information. Like I've said before, I'm getting closer and closer to the information. But at the end of the day, it's retail investors like myself getting into this, pushing this stock up because they can see the future. Again, we want to look into the future, right? We want to see what's going to be good. Both are very strong buys right now. In my opinion, I think within the next 12 to 24 months, you're actually going to see these stock prices that they're currently at, both Netflix and TKO. You're going to think these stock prices are very low, especially if Netflix does a stock split, which there is potential for that because they are getting a little bit, on the expensive side in terms of a stock. But what I'm saying, guys, and like we said earlier, the theme of the pod, long-term vision beats short-term gains. I'm telling you right now, TKO, and I told you 2 weeks ago, TKO was a good company to invest in. If you had invested in TKO, guys, 2 weeks ago when I had mentioned it first, or not first, but I had mentioned it on the podcast and said that it was a good investment, you would be up 10% on your investment within 2 weeks. That's just ridiculous, all right? Now, that's not going to happen all the time. Of course, it's obviously going to settle and be in a spot for quite some time as the company grows and grows and grows. But I'm telling you, the revenue that is coming into this company is just going to make WWE bigger, which only helps TKO, which only helps Netflix. Guys, just look at the numbers. Long-term vision beats short-term gain, and we're long-term here, man. Something also that I wanted to bring up within the investment wrap of the week was something I stumbled upon this week that it was kind of like a light bulb in my head went off, was data centers, guys. And this dips into the real estate market, but on top of that, it dips into the AI, crypto, and these days, honestly, just everyday life, realistically. These are giant facilities that house millions and billions of CPUs for companies like Google, Meta, Amazon. They all store data, okay? They all store data for these companies. This is like right. Like I didn't think about how huge of a sector this would be with cloud spaces. It already is, right? But where do you think your iCloud is? Your iCloud is actually physically on a device somewhere. Realistically, it's sitting in a warehouse somewhere, right? Like it's kind of crazy to think about when you break it down that far. So as we invest, we know that the government is putting $500 billion into AI and crypto. Trump just signed that. Okay, Trump in his first week just said we are doing this initiative, the Stargate, guys. Go look at Trump Stargate. It will pop up. Read about this. They're putting $500 billion into AI and crypto in the United States specifically. Why would we go outsource our data housing centers? Okay, so if we know that AI is ran off of data and everything like that, CPUs. You're telling me we're gonna go house and store that somewhere in Canada and Mexico and in China and somewhere like that? Obviously not. It's gonna be in the United States. So these companies, US based companies that do data, are very, very strong companies to look into, in my opinion. But honestly, any company within the sector is a great company to look into. Multiple companies, two companies all point out Digital Reality, ticker symbol DLR. It's a smaller size company, but they're growing fast. They're a clear second in command in the industry. And then Equinix. Equinix has been around for a long time, guys. They're a clear number one in the industry. They've been around since data harvesting was realistically even a thing. They survived the dot-com bubble burst back in the day. And their stock is doing so well back then. They did a 1 to 32 stock split. As I mentioned, a stock split potentially with Netflix. What that is, guys, and what I'm saying when I say a stock split is because a stock gets so expensive, essentially retail, who I just mentioned, also doesn't want to get it because it becomes too expensive for them in most cases. They think it's too expensive. They'd rather see the price lower before they get in. That's not very good for the company and the stock price, right? So what a lot of companies do is they'll figure out a way to do a stock split. They'll figure out a fair valuation per stock to give. Essentially, they did a 1 to 32 stock split. So for every one stock you owned, we'll give you 32 of these stocks. That's crazy. Okay, that's just absolutely wild, right? But at the end of the day, they did a 1 to 32 stock split back in '02, guys, okay? That's how popular this stock has been and for how long this company has been around. So that's a safe bet, Equinix. You know they're one of the biggest data housing companies within the entire world. So look into these companies, guys. Look into these companies that are doing these things. Again, $500 billion is going into the AI sector and the crypto sector in the United States specifically. Going to create about 100,000 jobs within the United States. If you're looking for a career path, bingo, right? Like that's just what I'm saying. But again, the data housing is what I want you specifically to focus on. If you're like me trying to build up a portfolio that is long-term for value, right? Long-term is better than short-term gains. Long-term value better than short-term gains. The theme of the podcast, guys. Okay? That really ties into that, of course. We're looking at long-term value. 500 billion is going in right now. What does that mean for the data that's going to be necessary to house all of this new technology that's going to be coming in, all of this new data that's going to be coming in because of this 500 billion that's streaming into the sector? These companies are going to have to house it. So that's where we want to go. That's the long-term vision. This is the short-term gain. We're, of course, still going to invest in the AI sector, the quantum sector. Duh, right? Like that's going to make you gains. But at the end of the day, be smart and go deeper than that, further than that, and get the long-term vision to understand that the data centers are going to be just as popular and just as necessary within this new world and new sector that you're starting to see develop very rapidly, guys. I don't think this is, again, going to be something that, happens within the next 5-10 years. We're just going to be a fully digital world. But no, you're seeing it. There's countries that fully run off this stuff. El Salvador fully runs off this stuff, right? I'm just saying, man, that's the investment wrap of the week. This has been the pod of the week. I appreciate y'all tuning in. I don't appreciate the Dallas Cowboys. That's the last time we're mentioning them on this podcast. Hope y'all have a good Sunday, man. We out.